Stone Bear found her dying at the abandoned station, rain hammering the broken roof above her fevered body. Lightning split the sky as he lifted Zephyra from the rotting floorboards. Her dark skin burned with sickness. Her breath came shallow and quick. "You're coming with me," he said to the unconscious woman. Thunder swallowed his words. The storm had driven him to seek shelter at Willow Creek Station. Instead, he found a woman left behind like discarded freight. A crumpled paper lay beside her. Marriage contract. Mail order bride arrangement. The ink had run in the rain, but the rejection was clear. Stone Bear stood 7 feet in his boots. The woman weighed nothing in his arms. Her fever soaked through his shirt. She mumbled words he pretended not to understand. "Samuel Creed," she whispered. "The ledger. He can't know." The name hit him like cold water. Samuel Creed, the Territorial Land Commissioner, the man who smiled while he stole. Hoofbeats approached through the storm. Stone Bear moved to the broken window. 3 riders picked their way through the mud. They wore badges that meant nothing out here. They carried guns that meant everything. The woman stirred in his arms. Her eyes opened, dark brown and unfocused with fever. "Please," she breathed. "Don't let them find me." Stone Bear pulled his coat over her head. He slipped out the station's back door as the riders reached the front. The rain covered their escape. His horse waited where he'd tied her. The mare stamped and shook her head at the storm. He lifted the woman onto the saddle. She slumped against him. Her fever burned through layers of wet cloth. The ride to camp would take 2 hours. She might not survive half that time. "Stay with me," he said in English. She didn't respond. Her breathing grew more shallow. Stone Bear urged his horse faster through the darkness. The storm was his ally now. It would wash away their tracks. It would keep the badge men at the station until morning. The hidden camp lay in a box canyon 20 miles north. His people had lived there since the Blue Coats started their latest push. 43 Comanche, mostly women and children. A few old men, some warriors like himself who refused the reservation. Mourning Dove met him at the canyon mouth. His sister's face went hard when she saw the woman. "What have you done?" she asked in Comanche. "Saved a life. Brought us trouble." Stone Bear carried the woman to his lodge. Mourning Dove followed. Her disapproval filled the small space like smoke. The woman needed warmth, clean water, medicine herbs. She needed to live long enough to explain Samuel Creed. "She's burning up," Mourning Dove said. Her healer instincts won over her anger. "Get me sage and willow bark." Stone Bear stepped back outside. The storm was moving east. Stars appeared between breaking clouds. Other lodge fires flickered in the canyon. Faces appeared at doorways. News traveled fast in a camp this small. Old Man Wolf approached. The elder's weathered face showed nothing. "The council will want to know why," Wolf said. "She was dying. Many people die, we don't collect them all." Stone Bear met the old man's stare. "She knows things, about the land commissioner, about the treaties." Wolf's expression shifted. "What kind of things?" "I'm not sure yet. She's been talking in her fever. She mentioned Samuel Creed." The elder spat in the dirt. Every Comanche knew that name. Creed had stolen more land with his pen than the army took with guns. His treaties were traps disguised as gifts. "If she knows Creed's secrets, she's worth saving," Wolf said. "If she doesn't, she's a mouth to feed we can't afford." The old man walked away. Stone Bear gathered the medicine herbs. Inside the lodge, Mourning Dove had stripped the woman's wet clothes. She worked to bring down the fever with cool water and prayers. "She's strong," Mourning Dove admitted. "But she's been sick for days. Maybe weeks." Stone Bear knelt beside them. In the firelight he could see the woman more clearly. Young, maybe 25. Her hands were soft like she'd never worked fields. Her dress had been fine before the rain ruined it. She wore no wedding ring. "Where did she come from?" Mourning Dove asked. Stone Bear showed her the crumpled marriage contract. His sister squinted at the writing. She knew some English letters but not enough to read. "She came west to marry someone," he explained. "They left her at the station instead. Because she's dark, probably." Mourning Dove's face hardened again. She'd seen enough white man's hatred to understand. So now she's our problem. Now she's our guest. The woman stirred. Her eyes opened. They fixed on Stone Bear's face. Fear flickered there, then resignation. She'd expected to die alone. Instead, she'd awakened among strangers. "Water," she whispered. Stone Bear lifted a gourd to her lips. She drank slowly. Her eyes never left his face. She was measuring him, deciding if he meant harm. He kept his expression gentle. "Thank you," she said. He nodded. Let her think he understood little English. It was safer that way. People revealed more when they thought you couldn't comprehend their words. "My name is Zephyra," she said. "Zephyra Caldwell." Stone Bear touched his chest. "Stone Bear." She tried to sit up. Morning Dove pressed her back down. "Rest now," his sister said in broken English. "Fever too high." Zephyra's eyes fluttered closed. The herbs were taking effect. Her breathing grew deeper, more steady. Color returned to her dark skin. Stone Bear watched her sleep. This woman knew Samuel Creed. She'd spoken his name like a curse. She'd mentioned a ledger, evidence perhaps, something worth killing for. The storm had brought her to him. The same storm that kept Creed's men from following. Maybe the spirits meant for this meeting to happen. Morning Dove banked the fire for the night. "She'll live," she said. "The fever's breaking." Stone Bear nodded. He'd sleep outside the lodge. Give the women privacy, but he'd stay close. Zephyra Caldwell carried secrets. Tomorrow he'd begin learning what they were. The wind died to nothing. Stars filled the sky like scattered diamonds. Somewhere in the distance a coyote called to its pack. The sound echoed off canyon walls. Stone Bear pulled his blanket tight. The woman would recover. Then the real questions would begin. What did she know about Samuel Creed? Why had someone wanted her dead at that station? Most importantly, could her secret save his people from the commissioner's lies? Or would helping her destroy them all? Dawn came gray and cold. Zephyra woke to unfamiliar sounds. Children's laughter, women grinding corn, the crackle of cook fires warming the canyon air. Her fever had broken in the night. Sweat had soaked the buffalo robes beneath her, but her mind felt clear for the first time in weeks. She sat up slowly. Her body ached but held steady. Morning Dove appeared at the lodge entrance. The Comanche woman carried a bowl of broth. Steam rose from the wooden vessel. The smell made Zephyra's stomach clench with hunger. "You eat," Morning Dove said in careful English. Zephyra accepted the bowl with both hands. The broth was rich, meat and wild onions. Salt from some distant trade. She drank deeply. "Thank you," she whispered. Morning Dove watched her with calculating eyes. This woman was measuring her worth, deciding if kindness was wasted on a stranger. Stone Bear ducked through the lodge entrance. His massive frame filled the small space. In daylight he seemed even larger, more imposing. His black hair hung loose past his shoulders. War paint had been washed from his face. He spoke to his sister in Comanche. Rapid words Zephyra couldn't follow. Morning Dove's responses were clipped, sharp, an argument conducted in undertones. Stone Bear turned to Zephyra. He pointed to his chest. "Stone Bear," he said slowly. She understood. He was teaching her his name properly, giving her the gift of address. "Zephyra," she replied, then pointed to Morning Dove with raised eyebrows. "Morning Dove," he said. The sister's expression softened slightly. Names were important. They created connection across the void of language. Stone Bear gestured toward the lodge opening. He wanted to show her the camp. Zephyra nodded. She needed to understand where she was. What kind of people had saved her? Outside, the box canyon revealed itself in morning light. Red stone walls rose 300 feet on all sides. A narrow stream ran down the center. Cottonwoods clustered along its banks. Their leaves had turned yellow with autumn's approach. 40 lodges dotted the canyon floor. Smoke drifted up from cook fires. Women tended children and mended clothes. Old men worked on weapons and tools. A few young warriors practiced with lances near the far end. It was a hidden world, a pocket of the old life tucked away from the reservation's reach. Stone Bear led her toward the stream. Children stopped their games to stare. They'd never seen someone with her coloring before. Dark skin, but not Comanche dark. Different features, different hair. "Where you from?" Stone Bear asked. His English was broken but clear. Zephyra decided to trust him with partial truth. "Georgia," she said, "came west to marry." But the man changed his mind. Stone Bear nodded. He understood rejection. His people had been rejected from their own lands. They reached the stream's edge. Water ran clear over smooth stones. Zephyra knelt and cupped some in her hands. It tasted of minerals and sky. "Why did you help me?" she asked. Stone Bear studied her face. Behind his eyes she sensed a sharp intelligence. This man understood more than he revealed. "You were dying," he said simply. But Zephyra heard the unspoken truth. He'd helped her for reasons beyond mercy. She represented something to him. Information, perhaps, or leverage in some larger game. Mourning Dove approached with two small children. A boy of maybe 8, a girl slightly younger. Both regarded Zephyra with open curiosity. "My son," Mourning Dove said, touching the boy's shoulder. "Running Fox." The girl pressed closer to her mother's side, shy but interested. "Little Moon," Mourning Dove added. Zephyra smiled at both children. They were beautiful, dark eyes bright with intelligence. Healthy despite the hard life of hiding. "Can they read?" Zephyra asked. Mourning Dove frowned. The question puzzled her. "Read," she repeated. Zephyra traced letters in the dirt with her finger. The English alphabet. A BC. The children crowded closer to watch. "Marks that mean words," Zephyra explained. "Talk on paper." Understanding dawned in Mourning Dove's eyes. She'd seen white men's papers, treaties and proclamations, documents that held power over life and death. "You know this?" Mourning Dove asked. "Yes. I can teach." The offer hung in the morning air. Zephyra had just proposed something revolutionary. Education for Comanche children. Knowledge of the white man's symbols. Stone Bear and his sister exchanged looks. A whole conversation passed between them without words. This woman could read the papers that decided their fate. She could interpret the documents that stole their land. "Why?" Mourning Dove asked. Zephyra considered her answer carefully. These people had saved her life. They deserved honesty, but not the whole truth. Not yet. "Your children are smart," she said. "They should know all kinds of talking." Mourning Dove knelt beside the marks in the dirt. She touched each letter with careful fingers. "Show me," she said. The lesson began that afternoon. Zephyra sat with Mourning Dove and her children beside the stream. Other women gathered at respectful distances, curious but cautious. She started with simple words: tree, water, sky, things they could see and touch. The children learned fastest. Their minds were hungry for new patterns. Stone Bear watched from across the camp. He sat outside the council lodge with Old Man Wolf and 2 other elders. They appeared to be discussing everyday matters, camp business, hunting plans, but Zephyra felt his attention. He was studying her methods, listening to her voice carry across the canyon, learning things she didn't realize she was teaching. As the sun moved west, she noticed something else. Stone Bear occasionally glanced at papers the elders spread between them. Treaty documents written in English. His eyes followed the words with too much comprehension for a man who claimed broken language skills. He could read already. The realization hit her during the evening meal. Stone Bear understood far more English than he pretended. He'd been listening to her fevered ramblings that first night, her mentions of Samuel Creed, her desperate words about the ledger. This man was playing a deeper game than simple mercy. After dark, Zephyra helped Mourning Dove clean the cooking vessels. The work felt good, normal. She'd been a house servant in Georgia before answering the mail-order bride advertisement. Her hands knew the rhythm of domestic tasks. "You stay long?" Mourning Dove asked quietly. The question carried weight. Winter was coming. Food would be scarce. Every mouth mattered in a camp this size. "I don't know," Zephyra admitted. "I have nowhere else to go." Mourning Dove nodded. She understood displacement. Her people had been driven from home after home, always moving, always running. "Stone Bear thinks you important," Mourning Dove said. Zephyra looked toward the council fire. The men were still talking, still spreading papers in the flickering light. Important how, Morning Dove's smile held secrets. He thinks you know things about the land stealer, Samuel Creed. The name dropped between them solid as stone. Zephyra's hand stilled on the clay pot she was scrubbing. What makes him think that? You talked in the fever, said his name many times. Zephyra's mind raced. How much had she revealed in her delirium? What secrets had spilled from her burning lips? Samuel Creed had destroyed her life in Georgia, driven her west with threats and fear. Now his shadow had followed her even here, to this hidden canyon, to these people who'd shown her unexpected kindness. Creed is a bad man, she said carefully. Morning Dove spat in the dirt. All commissioners are bad men. They steal with papers instead of guns. The hatred in her voice was cold as winter wind. These people had suffered under Creed's policies, his fraudulent treaties, his systematic theft of tribal lands. Zephyra made her choice, not full truth yet, but enough to build trust. I worked in his office, she said, in Georgia. I saw things, bad things. Morning Dove's hand stopped moving. She turned to face Zephyra fully. What kind of things? Stealing, money meant for your people, land deals that weren't real. The words hung heavy between them. Zephyra had just confessed to knowledge that could save or damn everyone in this canyon. Morning Dove stood slowly. She walked toward the council fire without looking back. Within moments she was speaking urgently to her brother, gesturing toward Zephyra, sharing the revelation. Stone Bear's eyes found Zephyra across the fire-lit space. His gaze held new intensity, new calculation. She'd just become far more valuable than a simple refugee, and far more dangerous to keep alive. Stone Bear came to her before dawn. Zephyra woke to find him crouched beside her sleeping robes. His presence filled the lodge like gathered storm clouds. "We need to talk," he said in perfect English. The pretense fell away between them. No more broken words, no more careful gestures. His voice carried the educated cadence of someone who'd spent years learning white man's language. Zephyra sat up slowly. Her hand moved instinctively to cover her throat. This man had been deceiving her from the beginning, reading her reactions, cataloging her words. "How long have you known?" she asked. "Known what? That I worked for Samuel Creed." Stone Bear settled back on his heels. In the dim light his face was unreadable, carved from shadow and sharp angles. "You mentioned his name that first night, during the fever. You talked about a ledger, about things he couldn't know." The words hit her like cold water. She'd revealed everything while unconscious, handed him her deepest secrets without realizing it. "What else did I say?" "Enough to know you're running from him, enough to know you have something he wants." Zephyra pulled the buffalo robe tighter around her shoulders. The canyon air held autumn's bite now. Winter would come early this year. "Why didn't you tell me you could read?" she asked. Stone Bear was quiet for a long moment. Outside the camp was stirring. Cook fires being lit, water carriers heading to the stream. "For the same reason you didn't tell me about the ledger," he said finally. "Some truths are too dangerous to share." They measured each other in the growing light. Two people who'd survived by keeping secrets, by revealing only what served their purposes. "I need to know what's in that ledger," Stone Bear said. "Why?" "Because Samuel Creed is destroying my people one treaty at a time. If you have evidence of his corruption, it might be the only way to stop him." Zephyra studied his face. She'd seen desperation before, in Georgia, in the faces of people who had nothing left to lose. Stone Bear wore that same expression now. "The ledger is back at Willow Creek Station," she said, "hidden in the floorboards." "What's in it?" Zephyra took a breath. Once she spoke these words, there would be no taking them back. No pretending she was just a failed mail-order bride seeking shelter. Financial records, federal funds allocated for tribal territories, money that never reached your people. Creed was skimming from every account, selling land grants that didn't exist, creating false treaties with railroad companies. Stone Bear's jaw tightened, his hands curled into fists. "How much?" "Hundreds of thousands of dollars, maybe more. He's been stealing for years." The silence stretched between them. Outside, children were playing some game involving sticks and laughter. The sound felt distant, disconnected from the weight of revelation in the lodge. "Why didn't you go to the authorities in Georgia?" Stone Bear asked. "I tried. They wouldn't listen to someone who looked like me, especially not against a territorial commissioner, so I gathered more evidence, copied pages from his ledgers, built a case no one could ignore. And he found out. The night before I planned to turn everything over to federal investigators, men came to my boarding house. I barely escaped out the back window." Stone Bear nodded. He understood running. His people had been doing it for years. The mail-order-bride arrangement was his idea. He wanted me far from Georgia, somewhere I couldn't cause trouble. The marriage contract was fake. The man was supposed to kill me quietly, make it look like I died of fever or Indian attack. But he couldn't go through with it. Some white men draw lines, even when money's involved. Zephyra wrapped her arms around her knees. The memory of that night still burned, arriving in Texas full of hope, finding only rejection and abandonment, the slow realization that she'd been marked for death. "So you know why I can't go back to Willow Creek," she said. "Creed's men are probably watching the station." Stone Bear was quiet for a long time. When he spoke, his voice carried new weight. "What if you didn't have to go back alone?" The question hung between them. Zephyra felt something shift in her chest, a loosening of the knots she'd carried since Georgia. "Your people would never risk that, not for an outsider." "You're not an outsider anymore. You've been teaching our children, sharing knowledge. Morning Dove considers you family now." Family. The word hit deeper than Zephyra expected. She'd been alone so long she'd forgotten what belonging felt like. "Even if we got the ledger, what then? Who would believe evidence gathered by Comanche and a runaway house servant?" Stone Bear smiled for the first time since she'd known him. The expression transformed his face, made him seem younger, more human. "Leave that to me," he said. Before Zephyra could ask what he meant, Morning Dove appeared at the lodge entrance. Her face was tight with worry. "Riders," she said in Comanche. Stone Bear was on his feet instantly. He moved to the lodge opening and peered out. Zephyra followed. 3 men on horseback had entered the canyon from the South Passage. They rode under a white flag, but their hands stayed near their weapons. Government men by their clothes and bearing. "Do you recognize them?" Stone Bear asked. Zephyra studied the lead rider, tall and thin with a carefully trimmed beard, something familiar in his posture. "The one in front," she said. "That's Deputy Marshal Hawkins. He works for Creed." Stone Bear's hand moved to the knife at his belt. Around the camp, women were gathering children. Warriors emerged from lodges with weapons ready. "He's here for you," Stone Bear said. "Probably." "Will you go with him?" The question surprised her. Stone Bear was offering her a choice. She could walk out of the canyon under the white flag, return to whatever justice waited in the white world, or she could stay, trust these people who'd shown her unexpected kindness, fight alongside them against the man who destroyed her life. "No," she said, "I won't go." Stone Bear nodded. He'd expected that answer, maybe hoped for it. "Then we make our stand here." He stepped outside the lodge. His massive frame seemed to fill the canyon. Other warriors moved to flank him. Old Man Wolf emerged from the council lodge carrying a rifle. Deputy Marshal Hawkins rode closer. His voice echoed off the stone walls when he spoke. "We're looking for a woman, dark-skinned. Goes by Zephyra Caldwell. She's wanted for questioning in federal crimes." Stone Bear answered in fluent English. His accent was slight but unmistakable. "There is no one here by that name." Hawkins smiled. The expression held no warmth. "Mind if we look around? Just to be sure." "Yes," Stone Bear said. "I mind." The deputy's smile faded. His hand moved closer to his sidearm. The 2 riders behind him shifted in their saddles. "You're harboring a federal fugitive. That makes you guilty of aiding and abetting. This is sovereign Comanche territory. Your authority ends at the canyon mouth." "Not anymore. New territorial guidelines supersede all previous arrangements." Stone Bear took another step forward. The gap between him and the mounted men narrowed to 20 feet. "Show me the papers." Hawkins reached into his coat, but instead of documents, his hand emerged with a folded wanted poster. Zephyra's face stared back from crude ink lines. $500 reward, Hawkins said loudly, dead or alive. The words carried across the canyon, reached every ear in the camp. $500 was more money than most of these people would see in 5 years. Stone Bear didn't flinch, didn't look back toward Zephyra's hiding place. "Get out," he said quietly. "We'll be back," Hawkins promised, "with more men and federal warrants that supersede your territorial claims." The 3 riders turned and headed for the canyon entrance, but they moved slowly, deliberately, making sure everyone saw their faces, their weapons, the authority they represented. When the hoofbeats faded, Stone Bear returned to the lodge. Zephyra sat exactly where he'd left her, but something had changed in her expression. The last traces of hope had burned away. $500, she said. "Yes. Someone in this camp will take that deal." Stone Bear met her eyes. Behind them lay a truth neither wanted to acknowledge. Desperation made people do terrible things, even good people, even family. "Maybe," he said. "Then we don't have much time." "No, we don't." Samuel Creed arrived 3 days later with a territorial escort and false promises. The land commissioner rode into camp like he owned the canyon walls themselves. His smile cut sharp as winter wind. Stone Bear watched from the council lodge. Beside him sat Old Man Wolf and 3 other elders. Treaty papers lay spread between them, documents that would reshape everything. "Gentlemen," Creed called out in his politician's voice, "I bring good news from the territorial capital." The commissioner dismounted with theatrical flourish. His clothes were Eastern fine, wool coat and leather boots that had never seen honest work. Behind him rode 6 armed men in territorial uniforms. Zephyra pressed herself against the lodge wall where she'd been hiding. Through gaps in the buffalo hide she could see the man who destroyed her life. He looked smaller than memory painted him, more ordinary. Evil often wore unremarkable faces. "Chief Stone Bear," Creed said, mangling the pronunciation, "I have an offer that will solve all our difficulties." Stone Bear emerged from the council lodge. His massive frame dwarfed the commissioner. The contrast was deliberate, physical presence speaking where words might fail. "What kind of offer?" Stone Bear asked. Creed gestured to his escort. One man produced an ornate leather folder, legal documents bound in red ribbon, the ceremony of white man's law. "A permanent treaty," Creed announced. "Federal recognition of this canyon as sovereign Comanche territory, protected status for your people, guaranteed hunting rights across 3 counties." Murmurs rippled through the gathered crowd. This was more than anyone had dared hope for. Recognition instead of removal, protection instead of persecution. Old Man Wolf stepped forward. His weathered face showed cautious interest. "What does the government want in return?" Wolf asked in careful English. Creed's smile widened. The trap was set. Now came the spring. "Just one small thing," the commissioner said. "There's a fugitive hiding in your camp, a dangerous criminal who stole federal funds. Turn her over to territorial justice, and this treaty takes effect immediately." The silence that followed was thick as smoke. Every person in the canyon understood the choice. Zephyra's life against their future. Stone Bear met Creed's eyes across the dusty space. 2 men who'd played this game before, predator and prey changing roles with each move. "Show us the treaty," Stone Bear said. Creed nodded to his escort. The legal documents were unfolded with ceremonial care. Pages of dense text in government English, terms and conditions that would bind both sides. Stone Bear accepted the papers. His eyes moved across the words with practiced ease. Behind him, the other elders waited for translation. They trusted his judgment in the white man's language. What Stone Bear read made his jaw tighten. The treaty was generous on the surface. Beneath lay careful traps. Sunset clauses that could void the agreement. Territorial authority that superseded tribal law. Provisions that would slowly strangle Comanche autonomy. But his people didn't need to know that yet. This appears acceptable, Stone Bear said finally, but we need time to consider. Of course, Creed agreed. I understand such decisions require careful thought. The commissioner's voice carried false sympathy. He'd played this scene many times before. Different tribes, same outcome. How much time? Old Man Wolf asked. Until sunset tomorrow, Creed said. Then my offer expires. The deadline hung in the air like smoke from a funeral pyre. Zephyra felt her fate being weighed against 43 lives. The mathematics were simple, brutal, logical. Evening council began after Creed's men made camp outside the canyon mouth. The elders gathered around the central fire. Women and children kept respectful distance but listened carefully. This decision would shape their children's futures. Stone Bear translated the treaty's terms. He spoke slowly. Let each clause sink in before moving to the next. The elders asked pointed questions about hunting boundaries and federal oversight. No one mentioned Zephyra directly, but her presence weighted every word. Mourning Dove sat with other women on the council's edge. Her children pressed close to her sides. Running Fox and Little Moon had grown attached to their reading teacher. The thought of losing her showed in their frightened faces. What happens if we refuse? Asked Gray Hawk, the youngest elder. More soldiers come, Stone Bear replied. They drive us from the canyon. We become reservation Indians or hunted fugitives. And if we accept, Stone Bear was quiet for a long moment. The fire crackled between them. Sparks rose toward stars that had watched countless such deliberations. We become something else, he said finally. Not free, not conquered, something in between. The council talked deep into the night. Arguments flowed in careful undertones. Some favored the treaty despite its flaws. Others wanted to fight rather than compromise. A few suggested fleeing deeper into the territories. But always the conversation circled back to the same question. Was one woman's life worth risking everyone else's future? Zephyra didn't sleep. She lay in Mourning Dove's lodge listening to voices rise and fall around the fire, hearing her fate debated in words she couldn't understand. Near midnight, Stone Bear appeared at the lodge entrance. He moved like shadow made solid. His presence filled the small space. They'll vote at dawn, he said quietly. What will they decide? Stone Bear settled beside her, close enough that she could feel warmth from his massive frame. Not touching but present, solid. What would you decide? He asked. The question surprised her. No one had asked her opinion about her own fate. She was cargo to be traded or burden to be carried. I'd choose the tribe, she said. 43 lives matter more than one. Stone Bear nodded slowly. He'd expected that answer. Maybe hoped for it. Even knowing what Creed really is. What he's done to your people and mine. Zephyra was quiet. Through the lodge walls she could hear the council fire still crackling, voices still weighing options. That ledger at Willow Creek, she said. It contains evidence of crimes across 6 territories. Dozens of tribes have been cheated, hundreds of thousands in stolen funds. But it doesn't matter if we can't reach it. No, it doesn't. They sat in comfortable silence. Two people who'd found understanding in impossible circumstances. The canyon around them slept fitfully. Tomorrow would bring choices no one wanted to make. There might be another way, Stone Bear said. Zephyra turned to study his profile. In the dim light he looked carved from stone, ancient, permanent, but she heard calculation in his voice. What way? Give Creed what he expects, but not what he wants. Before Zephyra could ask what that meant, Mourning Dove stirred in her sleeping robes. The conversation ended as quickly as it had begun. Stone Bear melted back into shadow, but his words lingered. Give Creed what he expects, not what he wants. Dawn came gray and cold. The elders gathered before the council fire while dew still clung to the canyon walls. Their faces showed the weight of sleepless deliberation. Stone Bear stood before them. Behind him, the entire camp had assembled. Everyone would hear this decision, live with its consequences. We accept Commissioner Creed's terms, Stone Bear announced. The words hit Zephyra like physical blows. She'd known this moment would come, prepared herself for abandonment. but the reality still stole her breath. Morning Dove's hand found hers, squeezed once, a gesture of solidarity that somehow made the betrayal worse. "The woman will be turned over at sunset," Stone Bear continued, "in exchange for federal recognition of our territorial rights." Creed emerged from his camp outside the canyon. His smile could have lit fires. Everything was proceeding exactly as planned. "Excellent decision," the commissioner said. "I knew reasonable men would see the wisdom in compromise." Stone Bear met his eyes across the morning air. Something passed between them, a recognition of roles being played, games within games. "We'll have her ready," Stone Bear said. But as the crowd dispersed, Zephyra caught something in his voice, a note that didn't match his words. Stone Bear was planning something. She could feel it in the space between what he said and what he meant. The question was whether his plan would save her or simply make her death serve a larger purpose. The day stretched ahead like a road to execution. Somewhere beyond the canyon walls, Samuel Creed waited for sunset, for justice as he defined it. Zephyra pulled her blanket tighter and prepared to discover what Stone Bear meant by giving Creed what he expected, but not what he wanted. Morning Dove came for Zephyra when the sun reached its peak. Her face carried secrets beneath the mask of sorrow. "Time to go," she said in English. Zephyra expected shackles, rope bindings. Instead, Morning Dove handed her clean clothes and soft moccasins. "Stone Bear's plan?" Zephyra asked quietly. Morning Dove's eyes flickered toward the lodge entrance. Someone might be listening. Creed's men had been watching the camp all day. "Trust," was all she said. They walked together toward the canyon mouth. Other women joined them, a funeral procession for the living. Children pressed close with tears in their dark eyes. Running Fox slipped a carved wooden horse into Zephyra's hand. "For luck," he whispered. The gift nearly broke her composure. This boy had nothing, yet he gave what little he could. Stone Bear waited with 3 other warriors beside the council lodge. They'd painted their faces with traditional markings, war paint for a war that couldn't be fought with weapons. "Ready?" he asked. Zephyra nodded. She still didn't understand his plan, but she'd chosen to trust these people who'd shown her unexpected kindness. They rode toward Willow Creek in the afternoon heat. Stone Bear and 2 warriors flanked Zephyra. A 4th man rode behind. To anyone watching, she was clearly their prisoner, but her hands remained unbound. Her horse was fast and sure-footed. If this was betrayal, it felt strangely gentle. "How far?" Stone Bear asked when they stopped to water the horses. 2 hours, Zephyra replied. The abandoned station sat exactly as she remembered. Broken roof, sagging walls, the place where she'd nearly died, where Stone Bear had found her and changed both their fates. "Where's the ledger?" Stone Bear asked. Zephyra led him inside. The floorboards were warped and loose from years of weather. She knelt in the corner and pried up 3 planks. Beneath lay a leather satchel wrapped in oiled cloth. Her hands shook as she lifted it free. Everything she'd suffered for. All the evidence of Samuel Creed's corruption. Proof that could save dozens of tribes or die with her in territorial custody. Stone Bear opened the satchel carefully. Inside were pages of financial records, bank statements, forged documents, a catalog of systematic theft spanning 5 years. "This is enough?" he asked. "More than enough. If it reaches the right people." Stone Bear nodded. He began tearing pages from the ledger, selected documents that showed the worst crimes, the clearest evidence. "What are you doing?" Zephyra asked. "Insurance," he said. He folded the torn pages and tucked them inside his shirt. The remaining ledger went back into the satchel. "Creed gets some evidence," Stone Bear explained. "Federal investigators get the rest." For the first time since morning, Zephyra felt hope. Stone Bear wasn't just handing her over. He was building something larger, a trap within a trap. They reached the canyon as sunset painted the walls red. Creed waited with his escort in the gathering dusk. His smile widened when he saw Zephyra riding with her captors. "Punctual as promised," the commissioner said. "I appreciate men who honor their agreements." Stone Bear dismounted slowly. His warriors remained mounted, ready to flee or fight depending on what came next. "We keep our word," Stone Bear said. Creed gestured to his men. Two stepped forward with iron shackles. The sound of metal scraping metal echoed off the stone walls. "Wait," Zephyra said, every eye turned toward her. This wasn't part of any plan, she knew, but something in Creed's expression had triggered old instincts. Survival skills learned in George's shadows. "I know where it is," she said to Creed. "The evidence you're really looking for." The commissioner's mask slipped for just a moment. Behind the politician's smile lay the face of a man who'd built his fortune on stolen blood. "I don't know what you mean," Creed said carefully. "The ledger, financial records, everything I copied from your office before I ran." Stone Bear's jaw tightened. This wasn't the plan they'd discussed, but he stayed silent. Let Zephyra play whatever game she'd chosen. "Those records were destroyed," Creed said, "along with the original ledgers." "No," Zephyra replied. "I hid copies, insurance against exactly this moment." She pulled the leather satchel from her saddlebags, held it where Creed could see but not reach. "Everything's here: bank statements, forged treaties, correspondence with railroad men, 5 years of theft documented in your own handwriting." Creed's eyes fixed on the satchel with hungry intensity. This was what he'd really come for: not justice, not territorial authority, simple self-preservation. "Hand it over," he ordered. "Not until we renegotiate," Zephyra said. The word hung in the cooling air between them. Creed's men shifted nervously. This wasn't how captured fugitives were supposed to behave. "You're in no position to negotiate anything," Creed said. Zephyra smiled. The expression was cold as winter stars. "I'm in the only position that matters. I hold your destruction in my hands." She lifted the satchel higher. "Let firelight play across the leather binding. One word from me and federal investigators learn about the Cheyenne funds you stole, the Cherokee land grants you sold twice, the Kiowa treaty you wrote on toilet paper because you'd run out of official documents." Each accusation hit Creed like a physical blow. His face went pale beneath his carefully trimmed beard. "What do you want?" he asked. "New terms, fair treaties for every tribe you've cheated, full restoration of stolen lands, federal oversight of all future territorial negotiations." "Impossible. Then this ledger goes to Washington tomorrow, along with my testimony before a federal grand jury." Creed's hand moved toward his weapon, but Stone Bear stepped forward. His massive presence reminded everyone that violence could flow in multiple directions. "Think carefully, Commissioner," Stone Bear said. "Dead women tell no tales, but missing women raise uncomfortable questions." The standoff stretched taut as bowstring. 6 armed territorial men against 4 Comanche warriors and 1 woman with dangerous knowledge. Finally, Creed lowered his hand. "What guarantee do I have?" he asked. "That you'll destroy the evidence if I agree to your terms." Zephyra opened the satchel, pulled out half the ledger pages, held them toward the campfire. "Because I'm going to burn them right now, in front of witnesses. Show good faith." She dropped the papers into the flames. They caught immediately, years of evidence curling into ash and smoke. Creed watched his secrets burn with naked relief. Some of his crimes were disappearing forever. "The rest gets destroyed when the new treaties are signed," Zephyra said. But Stone Bear knew better. The pages burning in the fire were copies of documents he'd already torn out and hidden. The real evidence was still safe, still dangerous to Creed's future. This was the game within the game. Give Creed what he expected to see, not what he needed to destroy. "Agreed," Creed said finally. "I'll draft new territorial guidelines. Fair terms for all affected tribes. Federal oversight," Zephyra repeated. "Yes, federal oversight." She handed him the remaining ledger pages, watched him flip through documents that would doom him if anyone else ever saw them. "Pleasure doing business, Commissioner," she said. Creed mounted his horse without another word. His escort followed in confused silence. They'd come to arrest a fugitive. Instead, they'd witnessed negotiations that redrew territorial power. As the hoofbeats faded into darkness, Stone Bear turned to Zephyra. "That wasn't the plan," he said. "Plans change. Did you keep the important pages?" Stone Bear patted his shirt. The real evidence rested safe against his chest. "All of them." Then Creed just agreed to reform his entire operation based on documents he thinks he's about to destroy. They mounted their horses and turned toward the canyon. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. Federal investigators, territorial hearings, the long work of rebuilding what corruption had destroyed. But tonight they rode as partners. Two people who'd learned that survival sometimes meant changing the rules rather than playing by them. The canyon walls rose around them as they entered their hidden world, home to people who'd gambled everything on the possibility of justice. Behind them, Samuel Creed rode toward his own reckoning, carrying evidence of crimes he thought were safely buried, not knowing that dawn would bring federal agents to his door. Federal investigators arrived at dawn 3 days later. Their horses kicked up dust clouds that hung in the still morning air. Stone Bear watched them approach from the canyon rim. 6 men in dark suits carrying leather portfolios and federal warrants. The lead investigator dismounted with careful precision. His name was Thomas Brennan, a man who'd built his reputation prosecuting territorial corruption. His eyes swept the canyon with professional assessment. "Chief Stone Bear?" Brennan asked. "Just Stone Bear," came the reply. Brennan nodded. He pulled documents from his portfolio with ceremony reserved for important occasions. "We received your telegram, along with certain evidence regarding Commissioner Samuel Creed's activities." Stone Bear had ridden to the territorial capital the morning after their confrontation with Creed. The evidence hidden in his shirt had found its way to the right hands. Justice moved slowly, but it moved. "Commissioner Creed was arrested yesterday evening," Brennan continued. "Federal charges of embezzlement, fraud, and conspiracy. Your evidence provided the foundation for our case." Around the canyon, people emerged from lodges. Women held children close. Warriors stood ready despite the peaceful proceedings. They'd learned to distrust men in official clothes. Zephyra appeared beside Mourning Dove. Her face showed controlled tension. Federal investigators could still mean danger for someone with her past. Freedom was never guaranteed for people who looked like her. "Miss Caldwell," Brennan said, recognizing her from descriptions. "Your testimony will be crucial to our prosecution." "What kind of testimony?" she asked. "Details about Creed's methods, financial procedures you witnessed, evidence of systematic theft across multiple territories." Brennan gestured to his colleagues. They began spreading papers on a makeshift table. Maps of territorial boundaries, financial records, legal documents that would reshape the region's future. "Our investigation has uncovered corruption involving 17 territorial officials, 6 commissioners, dozens of fraudulent treaties. The scope is larger than anyone imagined." Stone Bear studied the maps with practiced eyes. Red lines marked stolen lands. Blue areas showed territories that might be restored. The mathematics of justice reduced to colored ink. "What happens to the affected tribes?" Stone Bear asked. "Full land restoration where possible. Financial compensation where restoration isn't feasible. New oversight protocols for all future treaties." Old Man Wolf approached the federal table. His weathered hands traced boundary lines that had shifted like desert sand for 20 years. "These promises," Wolf said in careful English. "How do we know they're real?" Brennan met the elder's suspicious gaze. He'd prosecuted enough territorial cases to understand the question behind the question. Because Congress is watching now. Federal oversight means federal accountability. No more commissioners operating without supervision. The investigation lasted 4 days. Investigators interviewed every adult in the canyon, documented testimonies about fraudulent negotiations, cataloged evidence of systematic abuse. Zephyra spent hours with federal stenographers. Her memory for details impressed even experienced prosecutors. She recalled specific conversations, exact dollar amounts, dates and locations that corroborated other evidence. "You have a remarkable memory," Brennan told her. I had to remember everything. It was the only way to survive. On the final day, Brennan presented his conclusions to the assembled camp. His words carried the weight of federal authority backed by congressional mandate. Samuel Creed's network stole over $400,000 in federal funds, sold non-existent land grants to railroad companies, created fraudulent treaties that had no legal standing. The numbers were staggering. Enough money to transform dozens of tribal communities. Instead, it had lined the pockets of corrupt officials. Full restitution will take time, Brennan continued, but the process begins immediately, starting with recognition of this canyon as sovereign Comanche territory. He handed Stone Bear an official document, federal recognition signed by territorial governors and congressional representatives. The paper Creed had offered as bait was now reality earned through courage. "What about the other tribes?" Stone Bear asked. "Each community affected by Creed's fraud will receive similar consideration. Your evidence exposed corruption that reached from Texas to Colorado." 6 months later, Zephyra stood before a one-room schoolhouse built where the council lodge once stood. 20 children sat on handmade benches. Comanche kids learning English letters. White settler children learning Comanche words. The school served 3 communities now. The canyon camp had grown as news of federal protection spread. Displaced families arrived weekly seeking safety and new beginnings. Stone Bear appeared in the doorway. His massive frame filled the entrance, but his presence no longer intimidated the children. They'd grown accustomed to their teacher's quiet guardian. "How did the meeting go?" Zephyra asked. "Railroad men agreed to our terms. They'll pay fair wages for right-of-way access. No forced relocations." Stone Bear had become something unprecedented. A tribal negotiator who could read federal law and speak boardroom English. His reputation reached territorial capitals and congressional offices. "More requests came in," he continued. "Cherokee delegation wants help with mining contracts. Cheyenne leaders need assistance with grazing rights." Their partnership had evolved into something larger than either had imagined. A bridge between 2 worlds that had rarely found common ground. "We'll need more teachers," Zephyra said. "Mourning Dove is learning fast. Running Fox can read better than most adults." Children began filing out as afternoon lessons ended. They chattered in mixed languages, English and Comanche words flowing together naturally. The sound of a future neither culture had planned, but both were building. Little Moon approached Zephyra's desk with careful steps. The girl still carried shyness, but her curiosity had grown stronger than her fear. "Miss Zephyra," she said in clear English, "will you teach us about Georgia? What would you like to know? Everything. Where you lived, what you ate, why you came here." Zephyra smiled. These children were hungry for stories beyond their canyon walls, tales of distant places and different lives. "Georgia has trees taller than these canyon walls," she began, "and rain that falls almost every afternoon in summer." As she spoke, Stone Bear listened from the doorway. 6 months ago, he'd found a dying woman at an abandoned station. Now she was teaching his people's children about worlds they'd never imagined. The transformation still amazed him. Not just Zephyra's recovery, but the changes rippling outward from her survival. Federal investigations, restored territories, new schools and hospitals funded with recovered stolen money. Evening came painted in desert colors. Orange and red light filled the canyon as cook fires began to flicker. The smell of roasting meat and corn bread drifted on cooling air. Zephyra walked beside Stone Bear toward the evening meal. Their friendship had deepened into something neither named but both recognized. Partnership built on shared purpose and mutual respect. "Samuel Creed's trial starts next month," Stone Bear said. "Will you testify?" "If needed, but your testimony is what matters most. You're the one who gathered the evidence." They reached the central fire where the community gathered each evening. Faces that had once viewed Zephyra with suspicion now welcomed her with genuine warmth. She'd become family through service rather than blood. Children pressed close as she sat on a blanket near the flames. They wanted stories, lessons, the gift of knowledge she offered freely. "Tell us about the ocean," Running Fox demanded. "I've never seen the ocean," Zephyra admitted. "Then tell us about mountains." "I'd like to see mountains too." Little Moon's eyes grew wide. "Haven't you been everywhere?" Zephyra laughed. The sound carried pure joy, freedom from the fear that had driven her west. "I've been hardly anywhere, but maybe someday we'll travel together, see oceans and mountains and cities full of lights." The children murmured approval. Adventures shared were always better than adventures faced alone. Stone Bear watched the scene with quiet satisfaction. This woman who'd arrived dying in his arms had become the heart of their growing community. Teacher, advocate, bridge between worlds that desperately needed connection. Stars emerged as the fire burned lower. Families drifted toward their lodges. Children were gathered for bedtime stories and lullabies. Zephyra and Stone Bear remained by the dying flames, two people who'd found home in the most unlikely circumstances. "Do you ever regret it?" Stone Bear asked. "Staying here instead of returning to Georgia?" Zephyra considered the question while embers popped and settled. Georgia felt like someone else's life now, a story that had ended so this one could begin. "Never," she said finally. "This is where I belong." Above them, the canyon walls rose like protective arms around their hidden world. A place where survival and dignity weren't opposing forces but mutually supporting strengths. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, more families seeking refuge, additional territories needing advocacy, the endless work of building justice from the wreckage of corruption. But tonight they sat in grateful silence. Two survivors who'd learned that home wasn't a place you were born, but a community you helped create. The fire burned down to glowing coals. Soon even those would fade to ash and memory. But the warmth they'd shared would last through whatever storms the future might bring. And that is all to the story for now. Please let me know where you are tuning in from. Perhaps we will create a story there. Consider liking this video and subscribing to our channel. And if you enjoy our content, click this video on your screen. I promise you it's worth watching. See you tomorrow.